Good evening, everyone. Welcome again to the Board of Selectmen meeting for the town of Yarmouth on May 14th, 2019. We're returning from executive session, and we'll open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll begin the meeting with public announcements and comments. Does anyone wish to address the board? Yes, please.
Christine Reilly from West Yarmouth. I wanted to make a couple of comments. The first one is about YSAC, and what I wanted to tell you was that on June 7th, YSAC, along with the funding from the county, will be sponsoring the Last Night Luau, which is going to be a graduation night before the day of graduation party for seniors. It's going to be a luau, and it's going to be celebrating Substance-Free Week that the seniors have all been participating in, and we're quite excited in the partnership that's going to take place. And then secondly, on the 12th, which is a Wednesday night, there will be a family discussion dinner at Cape Cod Tech, open to parents throughout the Cape Cod community for grades 7 through 11, to really talk about vaping, marijuana use, and things like that. And there will be a dinner served along with some speakers, so that will be a fun event, I think. The second thing I wanted to mention was the fact that the Energy Facilities Siting Board completed their final hearing and made their decision last Thursday on the final application and decision on Vineyard Wind. And during that time, Carl Von Holm was there, and actually I almost didn't recognize him. He was out of uniform and in a suit and tie, and he did a presentation with the statements from the town. And what I thought was significant was that the presiding officer had presided over all the hearings that had taken place last November and everything, announced the final decisions before the full board then voted on it. But she talked about the difficulty of the process because of the major federal waters involved, the state waters, and then an online 5.5-mile connection. She stated, and I quote, "There was significant public opposition to the use of the New Hampshire landing by both citizens and the town of Yarmouth as an environmentally fragile area with fishing, shellfishing, boating activity, and therefore Covels became the preferred route." So the decision at this point will be finalized when the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, the federal level, will issue a report on June 7th with it recording on August 16th, and that will then trigger that Vineyard Wind can go forward. But it's clearly going into Cobbles Beach. I did make a statement at the time that at this hearing the other day that we never really want to see cables in Lewis Bay, that we're really going to begin work on how we preserve or put a reserve on the bay itself to preserve it. I think it's significant in that they're going into Cobbles Beach with cables buried at 30 feet. They were proposing doing them at 5 feet here, and the issues of the 5-foot burial at Block Island have already been clearly evident with them floating to the water surface and trapping boat fishing and swimmers at the same time. So I just want to thank you publicly, the Board of Selectmen, along with the citizens in this community who devoted far too much time to something that should never have been thought of being placed in basically Lewis Bay as an estuary. And so it's over at this point, and I just commend everybody who's been involved with it. So thank you for your time.
Okay, Chris, well,
Can I ask one question?
Sure, go ahead.
Christine, thank you. I think the thanks goes both ways. It certainly your group did yeoman's work in staying abreast of all the different hearings, and thank goodness, because it's a lot of information to sift through. But back to your point about the vaping forum that you're having upcoming, there was one recently at the high school that I think you participated in. How was the turnout?
It was fairly small. It was a little bit disappointing. We had a number of people from the Board of Health and some people from the community. There were 3 students there who were asking some questions, I think, as part of a project. The speakers were very, very good. As a matter of fact, 2 of them are going to be present in doing the Cape Cod Tech one. Some very, very good information, because it is a significant issue for students at this point. The charts and the representations they understand now, I mean, we've dropped smoking to about 9% of our student population because of all our education on cigarettes. It's like 40-some%, I mean, rising for kids vaping, because they've been sold on the idea that it's not nicotine or anything else. In all the research, there is nicotine in it. There's actually a combination of heated metals. The problem is that they can be hidden in these things that look like little flash drives that go with their computers. It's causing a nightmare in school districts all around the country, here in Cape Cod, and it's so unhealthy for kids. Dr. Spillane will tell you that the research that they did for so many years on lung cancer, and then even on popcorn lung, because of the heated metallic oils and things that people were working in the processing plants making popcorn were getting violently ill from it in their lungs. He said they're starting to see some evidence that the vaping will cause the same kind of characteristics in it. And so we're looking at very young kids doing this, and it's awful. So anything to prevent it under 21, the sale of it, it's cheaper than cigarettes, is a problem.
Yeah. And there's no lasting effects after for parents to be able to be more aware of it. But maybe we can help share that information, because I think it's really, really important that people attend those forums. So thank you for your work on that.
Now, the other thing I would tell you is that the police department and parents at DY did some fabulous PSAs on no alcohol until 21. And at some point at a subsequent meeting here, we will bring those in. They're like a 2-minute PSA, and maybe show them to you as they go publicly about the under 21 and the pledge not to provide alcohol to kids under 21. So there's some nice, exciting work actually going on in the town of Yarmouth by the school district, by various groups. So it's kind of exciting. But the vaping, alcohol, drugs, unfortunately, are taking a toll on our kids, and they're starting at younger and younger. They look at average age of 14 as onset.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes.
Hi, my name is Jim Cullen. I live in District 1, and I've written letters to the editor. I've talked to Mr. Holcomb and also emailed him extensively, and I'm here for one more time to encourage the board to drop the lawsuit. I don't know what went on in court today, but what I do know as a citizen is that June 30th is coming, and it appears, to me anyway, very likely that we're going to lose the bonding, which means we're going to lose the school. And I think that's awful for education. I think it's awful for all the people who put in the time to plan this project. I had nothing to do with it, but am certainly supportive of it. And I do understand that it appeared to me anyway that the board used this lawsuit as leverage to get a revised school agreement. And it appears at the moment that that clearly has not worked out based on the action taken by the voters of Dennis last week. And it's just very discouraging as a citizen to see this go on. I just don't think it reflects on the town well. I understand you have to look out for the taxpayers. I understand last November you suggested to the voters that we not vote in favor of the school. And then I watched April 25th in the rehearsal, I guess you might call it, for the first time on television of the run-up to the town meeting. And Tracy, you were very eloquent in saying that we're better off together than we are apart as a school district. And I just hope you and the leaders in Dennis, because it can't just fall on the school committee. It takes the ultimate leaders of both towns to come to some positive outcome. And I just have to say, as one citizen, I'm extremely discouraged as I stand here tonight before you, based on what I learned from the newspaper and, again, in communications. And so, again, I would encourage you to, A, drop the lawsuit. If you refuse to do that and the judge rules against the town, I would ask that you accept that decision and not appeal it. And I have no idea, and you probably know better than I, whether or not this is even going to get resolved by June 30th in the court, when it appears to be. And I don't know if it's a no-go at that point on the part of the Massachusetts Bonding Authority. I do understand there has been one extension, I believe, to June 30th from April 11th or some date like that. but I can't imagine they're going to just keep giving additional extensions when there's probably other school districts looking for bonding for their projects. So I'm sure you had your reasons, but I, for one, they escape me. They really do. So I just wanted to come in person and say that tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, Jim?
Good evening, Jim Saban, Precinct 7. First, I want to take a minute to congratulate Mary Vilbon and the Chamber for bringing a wonderful event, Ragnar, to our town this weekend. I hear nothing but great things about it. I heard it was a great success, and they brought, I don't know, something like 6,000 people here. So well done to them. The second is town meeting. It was quite a success. One of the items that was brought up was the issue of single-source plastics. I voted to indefinitely postpone. And after I left, I thought about it, and I said, you know what? We should all be using these. And I see Mr. Post already does, and Mike has one as well. But I was thinking about it. Do we really need to have a policy at town meeting to go to a single source of plastics and eliminating them? And I think we can really do something and be leaders in our community if we do that and start to eliminate the use of single-source plastics in our community. And as leaders of our town, I would like to see you make it as part of your goals to see that happen in the town without us having to go to town meeting and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. So I would like to see the board do some leadership in eliminating those plastics and replacing them with this type of bottle and the many that are like this. That's all for right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just respond
Sure.
to that? I think, Jim, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think all of us felt that the cause was noble, and we recognize that, and we need to work towards it. But as Ms. Armstrong mentioned at town meeting, it's going to take a little bit of education and preparation and looking at making sure that we're prepared for it with water stations and stuff like that. So I think that you're on the right track, that we will be working towards that. And you know, that particular wording of that article, I think, was difficult because it really just, all it did was put a financial burden on the town of Yarmouth. And, you know, they weren't saying, don't use plastic. They were saying, well, you could buy it somewhere else and bring it with you. You're not really solving the problem. So I think we need to work towards making sure people are cognizant of it, really, and putting the water stations out and providing different opportunities with purchasing, but we'll get there. And putting it on our goals probably is valid, but I agree.
Towns have already adopted it. I think we can just do it without having to have it done at town meeting. I think through your leadership, we're going to get it done, so I encourage you.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else like to address the board? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on with our public hearing, our 6:15 item, and it's a transfer of alcohol license from Bass River Discount Liquors to Moonshine Liquors. Mr. Stone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You want to identify yourself, please, for the record?
Sure. Good evening, Attorney Jeff Ford here representing the applicant, Moonshine Inc., DBA Moonshine Liquors. Together with me tonight are Timothy and Alexander Jamoulis. They're the principal owners going forward here, and Alexander Jamoulis is also going to be the manager under the license.
Okay, before you begin, I'm just going to read the legal notice into the record, and then you can proceed, okay?
Sure.
The Yarmouth Board of Selectmen, acting as the local licensing authority, has received an application for a transfer of an annual all-alcohol package store license from Moonshine Inc., DBA Moonshine Liquors. Alexander Jamoulis, manager. The license is being transferred from Raymond E. Lazan, DBA Bass River Liquor Store, Raymond E. Lazan, manager. The premise, located at 931 Route 28 in Willow Street, South Yarmouth, is a two-story building with a first-floor retail area, front exit and entrance, rear side delivery door, second-floor storage and office, full cellar and storage. Hearing will be held on Tuesday, May 14, 2019, in the hearing room at the town offices, 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth. The Board of Selectmen meeting begins at 6 p.m. Written comments will be accepted until 4:30 p.m. Friday, May 10th, 2019, in the Selectmen's office at Town Hall. Verbal comments will be accepted at the hearing.
Terrific. So as indicated, Moonshine Inc., DBA Moonshine Liquors, has filed for a transfer of the all-alcohol license currently held by Bass River Discount Liquors, which has been a long-standing package store here in town. I think it dates back all the way to 1934. The proposed transfer doesn't propose any additional changes to the current licensed premises. They're just looking to transfer over to a new entity. DBA and manager is set forth in the applications. Both Timothy and Alexander Jamoulis, who will be the principal owners, again, who are here tonight, have a great deal of experience in ownership and management of other operations. The family's owned one back to the 80s in Brockton. They've also owned a store in Hyannis, which they recently sold, and they currently own a store in Chatham and Harwich, which they're involved with in both ownership and management. Alexander, who's going to be the manager, we've included his resume. He's got background and experience. Again, he's previously been the assistant manager for the Brockton store, the manager for their Hyannis store, and he's also an owner in the other two locations they have here on Cape Cod. I met with licensing staff to review the file again this morning. They indicated they have everything that was needed to complete the filing, and we're happy to answer any questions the board may have for us.
Okay, very good. Before we go to the board, is there anybody in the public that wishes to be heard on this? Okay. So you have the tip certification here for Alexander in the packet. And you're going to get tip certification for everybody there that serves alcohol?
Yes.
Okay, because that's required under the local rules and regulations. Have you met with Officer Phil Magnuson yet?
Not yet.
At the Dennis Police Department? There's a,
You said Dennis Police Department.
did I say Dennis? Oh. I have Dennis on my mind for a lot of reasons. Yarmouth.
Freudian tumble.
Yep, I agree. There's a course that he gives that's required every 2 years. Are you familiar with that?
I am. I believe
And
they
that's
are as
coming
well.
up, there's actually an opportunity. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but I believe there's one more date this month.
Sure.
Sorry.
It's very good. He'll go through A to Z, all the state requirements, all the local requirements. It's about 2 hours. He does a PowerPoint presentation, and the whole objective is to avoid problems, to avoid having to have licenses suspended, revoked, or warnings issued to license holders. I recommend that you contact him at the Yarmouth Police Station. He's an attorney as well as a retired police officer.
Sure.
And if you can, if you make this one, you don't have to go the following year unless you want to. Okay. This is every 2 years. So I would recommend you do that. Okay, so we'll go to the board. Norm, do you have any questions?
Just to reiterate again, are the 3 people that are listed as assistant managers presently tip certified?
3 people listed as assistant
It's
managers?
Timothy, Stephen, and Demetra?
We have all done it before, but I don't know if our tip certifications are still active
Okay, they have to be
before we can.
current. They're good for several years when you get them, so look at the dates. There's all kinds of courses that are given, and we do accept online courses. We prefer that you go to a live course, but they do accept online courses. And any new hire, I believe it's got to be within 14 days. They have to comply with that. We've had a couple problems, not a lot, but a couple with people who let the tip certifications lapse, and then the police come to do a compliance check. It's not good. Fortunately for those establishments, they shut them down and did the online tip certifications and then reopened them. Otherwise, they probably would have had more serious consequences. So the board's pretty insistent on that those be current, okay?
We'll take care of it.
Any other questions, Ron?
No, not at this time.
Okay, Tracy?
No, we have Alexander's here, and he's the manager, you'll be the manager. of record,
Yes,
correct?
Alexander will be.
So that's really the only approval we have to give tonight, is the manager's approval, is that correct, with the transfer?
We approved the license transfer.
And then, okay, so.
They're just telling you who's going to be the manager. And anybody that is going to be acting on behalf of the manager, you have to just let the licensing clerk know who that is.
Okay, so we don't have to approve tonight the assistant managers that aren't.
No.
Okay, they have to.
And I'll tell you, one of the things, and this isn't, my comments aren't directed to you. They're directed just in general, and hopefully they'll have some benefit. One thing that's really bothersome to the police officers is when they go there and they say who's in charge. If there's an incident and nobody knows who's in charge, it's right there, very telling. So you should make sure that any assistance, that the list is current with the licensing clerk.
We don't
Okay,
have any other questions.
Eric.
It's in order.
No questions, thank you.
all right.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
All right, we have a motion to close public hearing. We have a second?
Second.
All right.
Make a
I'll-
motion to approve, I'm
Well,
sorry.
let's close the hearing first. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, Tracy, go ahead.
Make a motion to approve the transfer of the all alcohol license from Bass River Liquors to Moonshine Liquors as requested.
Okay, there's no pledge with this, is there?
No.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, did they turn in, you have the green cards, or?
I was told that there wasn't green
Oh, you
cards
didn't
with
have
this
to
one
do that
because it's a transfer.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
You're right. Okay, thank you. You're all set.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good luck to you.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll move on then to the discussion of the Library Planning Committee.
Come on up, Richard.
I'm the shy guy.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Unless you really want me.
Good.
I'm Linda Callahan, Chair of the Library Study Ad Hoc Committee, and basically we're here to ask your support for the new committee to be established and a charge. So in your packet, I believe you received a copy of the letter and a new wording of a charge for the next committee.
Yes, we have that, yes. You were looking for confirmation,
Yeah.
right? All right.
Do you feel necessary that I repeat any of what's here, or?
I think probably for everyone's benefit, the public's benefit as well, it would be helpful just to
I'll read the letter.
generally outline what the intent is and then talk a little bit about the charge.
Sure. The letter was to thank you for taking the time to hear the recommendation of the study committee to begin with. And it was our charge to review and discuss the future of library facilities and services for the community. We met on a regular basis from 2015 and studied a number of resources to develop our recommendation. As we reported in January, the committee voted unanimously that we accept the facts presented, that the town of Yarmouth needs to move forward in an effort to increase its library capacity and centralize its service location to maximize resources and respond to the deficiencies identified in our report. We completed the charge. We request at this time the establishment of a library planning committee with a charge that would seek community input following the recommendation for a single, efficiently designed, centrally located facility by means of surveys, listening sessions, outreach, newspapers, social media, press releases, newsletters. We would continue, that group would continue to study demographic and needs assessment data. They would monitor the Mass Board of Library Commissioners' budget request, planning and design construction grant cycles, and create timelines of community action. They would investigate possible location and preliminary design considerations and explore legal requirements and financial options. Most of the group that worked together in the study committee is interested in continuing. We have another person that's spoken that they would like to be on the new planning committee. We haven't submitted any names yet. We have 5 people that are in the talent bank that expressed interest in being involved in this type of work, and we would like to pursue talking with them once this is confirmed. We suggest adding members with expertise in communications and public information campaigns, municipal building construction and design, state grant programs, with appointments to start in May of 2019 or at least in June. And then we attached suggested language for the new charge, and I can read that if you'd like. The general purpose would be using research and conclusions drawn by the Library Study Ad Hoc Committee as presented to the Yarmouth Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen, provide advisory support and make recommendations on the planning required to improve library services, and facilities for the town of Yarmouth and its many visitors. The specific charges would be the Library Planning Committee will meet regularly to seek community consensus by providing information, statistics, and options for the future of the Yarmouth Library facilities and service improvements. The group will utilize a variety of communication tools to listen and to respond to community input as Yarmouth plans for the future of library services. The committee will collect preliminary data in preparation for possible submission of a Mass Board of Library Commissioners planning and design grant application in the areas of possible site selection, site locations, engineering studies, schematic designs, building program documents, and other planning work. A timeline should be consistent with the MBLC grant funding cycle for planning and design, currently anticipated to be announced for fiscal year 2021 or 2022. The reporting would be to the Library Division of Community Services Department. In the membership, the committee will consist of up to 9 Yarmouth residents, including Library Director Jane Kane, and at least 2 members with some knowledge or experience with building construction trades, and a member of the Yarmouth Finance or Budget Committees. The committee can form ad hoc work groups to accomplish specific tasks as needed, and any procurement needs will be referred to the town administrator.
Okay. All right, well, then I guess at this point, we'd open it to board questions and comments, and then, if appropriate at that point, ask for a motion to accept the charge for the Library Planning Committee. So I'll open it up to the board at this point. Have questions?
No, I think this is great. I wonder if there needs to be any mention of membership terms, staggering of terms, and things like that. If you're going to have 9 members, your initial appointments, you probably want to have 3 1-year, 3 2-year, 3 3-year, and then every appointment after that would be for 3 years. Because obviously, you know, assuming the life of this committee would be longer than 3 years, perhaps it won't, but assuming it were, you know, you wouldn't want everybody to drop off at the same time. So we typically like to see them staggered.
Good idea.
That's really, I mean, I think that should be included in here, and that's really my only comment. Thank you very much. That's very well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work on this. I kind of want to call it Bud's charge. This was something that Bud, when he was alive, was an advocate for libraries in the Central Library, and he never was able to accomplish it in his time. So I think about him when I think about revisiting this. But the budget committees I guess it's just,
Capital budget.
yeah, I think we should correct that to say the Finance Committee and/or Capital Budget Committee. I think it is a good point to have somebody on that committee there. The problem I always worry about is overtaxing them. They have a lot of, all the committees have a lot of other assignments that they're responsible for. So maybe either or maybe one can be a voting and one could be an alternate or something. It'd be good to have some involvement. But other than that, my other point that I had was the rotating part that Eric had talked about, staggering the terms so that way it's consistent. And the MBLC may want to be spelled out because
It was earlier in the third or fourth paragraph, Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners.
In the
Are
letter,
you looking
it's
at
spelled
the,
out.
yeah,
In the charge.
in the charge itself?
okay, I'm just looking at the timeline, should be consistent with that. It
Oh,
gets,
it is.
I thought it was.
yeah, no, above it
It's
is.
in the third
Yeah.
paragraph. Yeah.
Okay. So, and the only other thing is the procurement needs would be referred to the town administrator, I would say through the library division. So I don't know if we need to clarify that, but,
Does it need to be mentioned twice if it's above there where department division assignment?
well, needs will be referred to the town administrator. I guess it's fine, but I just think as far as, I just wouldn't want to see the committee not go through our library director, go directly to that's why I just want to make sure that it's followed through but it's fine, I'm sure I'm overthinking it. Our committees don't usually go directly to the town administrator, so that's what staff to staff, I would say. But other than that, I think it's great. I'm looking forward to the work as it goes and seeing how we can bring the fractions together.
Do we need to
Well,
resubmit?
not really fractions, but, there are, I don't mean to say it in a divisive way, but there are people with very strong opinions on how we're going to go forward. And so watching how we move together forward is going to be interesting.
Definitely. Do you need to see a revised version of the charge?
I personally, I don't know.
I mean, if you want, what I can do, we can make the revisions, the June 4th meeting, we can have it on the consent agenda.
Yeah, why don't we do that? And I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, so that, because I think we have a general consensus that
Yep, that was the
this looks
point of
fine.
tonight,
Just thinking about the comment question that Eric raised, what did we do with the committee advising on the DPW building? Is that
I think that was,
rotating?
no, I mean, I would be surprised if it is. I think that's a very short-term committee for the specific purpose of accomplishing that building project. And if that's true for this, then fine, but I don't foresee, a planning committee usually if your goal is to accomplish a new library and then continue to plan into the future, you may want it to last longer than, or be more than a short-term committee. So I think if you plan on it being long-lasting, you should include the staggered term language.
And there's no harm in doing that. I mean, it just comes up as a matter of, a year from now, or whenever we fill the board, a year from then, the terms will come up for either reappointment or refilling, depending on what the needs are.
We had talked to the group about, depending upon how the grant cycle goes, when that gets done, you get to that point. If it gets to the point where DPW is presently, to Eric's point, that we would prop up a building committee.
Right.
New charge, expand this one, or close this one and put a new one in place.
Make it
to that
more
point.
specific to the building needs.
Single purpose to the building needs. that's
Okay,
right. Yeah.
all right, okay, that makes sense.
I just have one other thought.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Mike.
Well, go ahead.
My other thought would just be typically when we have something that is a little bit longer, that perhaps a check-in. I guess what I get nervous about is just to make sure it's on our planning for capital, that we're, maybe not till you have a plan, I don't know if it's 6 months or a year from now or whatever, but at some point in time, we would like to meet with the committee to measure its progress and if you have any information that we need to be aware of so we can plan for, if we get accepted into the grant, how much time we have to come up with capital funds.
Right.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I think that certainly will help in terms of bringing everything to the public as well, making everyone in the community more aware of what's being thought about and what they can participate in. So, yeah, I think that's important. And, if we have, whenever, I think certainly on an annual basis, it may be more appropriate on a semi-annual basis or as needed. And you just make arrangements through the town administrator for time on our agenda. So, if you think you reach a point of, a critical point where some input from the select board is needed, then, just contact Dan and we'll set that up.
Thank you.
Okay. Great, okay, well, then, let's move forward in that way then. I think we have the consensus of the board, and we'll have that on our consent agenda for the next meeting with that revision on the membership. So, great, thank you.
Very good. Thank
Okay,
you.
terrific.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move forward with our, the next major item on our agenda, the drive-in site policy presentation. So,
Everybody here for that? Oh.
He is everybody.
Were there other, should we move to something else? No.
did you anticipate anyone else participating?
I
Did you have anyone else?
Just staff.
Okay, all right.
They're here.
And everyone's here that you need at this point?
Yeah, my committee seems to have abandoned me.
Was
sure
there
they're all
something
watching
that
at home.
controversial that you're going to go through? Is that a...
No, I'm sure they're all watching at home, waiting for the hockey game, so hi, guys. And
All right.
I'll be,
As are we, so make this snappy.
Yeah.
so for those watching on TV who don't know who I am, I'm Jim Saban. I'm the chair of the Drive-In Site Committee. The committee was charged with looking at the drive-in site with long-term and short-term uses for the property. Long-term being obviously the River Park, Riverwalk and the Boardwalk. We've been successful with some CPA applications, and additional grant funding is being sought. Our next steps are an RFP for design and permitting. I want to take a moment to thank those that attended town meeting and voting in support of the $2.2 million that we received through CPA funding. So that's going to be a huge help in moving this project forward. So thank you to the people of town for doing that. The purpose for tonight is focus on short-term efforts associated with a drive-in based upon the town's desire to encourage additional use of the property. In your packets, there's a policy drafted, is an interim use policy. Understanding that the site, its use and improvements are dynamic. There's things going on all the time as far as moving forward. As a little bit of a background, Karen has put a slide up here. So this is the event space that we're talking about. The red area is defined as the area that events can take place in. We've had a number of events. In March of 2018, we had our first Irish Festival, and then we did some cleanup in July of 18, and in doing so, we used DPW. The AmeriCorps did a glass walkthrough, and we did some beautification with some funding through tourism preservation funds to get it so that we could start to at least look at utilizing it. In August of that year, we had our first event, if you will, which was a music fest. And that was the general layout of the event. It was relatively successful, and it gave us some things to look at as far as how we're moving forward. Then again, we had this March another Irish festival that's tied in with the Irish Parade. As you know, thousands of people come to the community over that weekend, and they've had this event 2 years in a row. If I can take an opportunity, if you look at the tent on the left-hand side, and just behind it, there's a dark-colored area. That's an area that I'm going to talk to you about. Actually, I can talk about too right now. Is one of the things we did was some site cleanup. If you recall, we used some of the funding to remove the mulch in the punky area, I guess. How would you describe that?
Yeah, so back back of where Jim noted the tent, there's a large area that was full of mulch from all the old storm events and everything, where the town would take in brush, debris, and mulch it up. The Drive-In Site Utilization Committee, hearing from event organizers, in particular the Irish Fest, Country Fest, who want to use the site more and be able to fully use the site, backed a request to the CEDC through the Tourism Revenue Preservation Fund to have the mulch removed. And so we went out and procured that. That's recently been done. I have some pictures of that too. So we removed the mulch. Pictures, I can barely see it, but that's the mulch removal. It's recently been hydro-seeded. And then the balance of the work that's going to be done to really expand use on the site is moving there's a big giant pile of rocks there, many of which came from the Bass River Bridge.
Yep. The railroad bridge.
And Carl has plans for use of some of those rocks, but in the meantime, they're really in the way. So we're going to move those. This is just a before and after showing from before the initial crack at cleanup last summer, where the DPW went in with AmeriCorps and our beautification team, and to today. So it's a little bit hard to see, but it is a pretty remarkable difference. And then that brings you up to the upcoming event.
So I'm sure you've heard on the radio that the Country Fest is coming with Uncle Cracker as a headline one night, and Charlie Daniels Band the next night. Again, this gives us an opportunity to see how these types of events work. It's a learning experience for us. So far, so good with the events that we've had. But in part of this, we've come to the point that we need a policy for the use of the facilities, and that's really what we're here about tonight. It's in your packet. That we put together a draft of a use policy based upon a number of things. And Karen, do you want to talk about the process and how we went about putting together the draft policy and who we worked with?
Sure. So the committee started back in the fall of last year, and they started out by really taking a look at what are other towns doing. We looked at Brewster and Barnstable, Falmouth, and whatnot. Everybody's got something that they rent out, and usually it's a nominal fee. We also took a look at what do we do already here in Yarmouth, and the best examples that we have are Flax Pond and the sporting fields that are in place at Peter Homer Park and across the way at the John Simpkins. Committee took a crack at building on what had already been done, solicited feedback from the various town staff, our department, conservation, recreation, DPW, natural resources, building and health, licensing, and police and fire. So we really had a broad reach internally to get feedback on the policy. We had volunteers. DPW stepped up to be the ones that you go to see when you're like a pre-event inspection and a post-event inspection, and that's something Jim will get to in terms of the rules and regulations. The committee also met with event organizers. They had a big meeting over at Bridgewater one night with representatives from the different events that have largely come through the town. Seaside Festival folks, Chamber of Commerce was there, Taylor Bray Farm, Cultural Center, and Patrick McDonough, and kind of really hashed out what's good about the site, what's bad about the site, what's realistic in terms of use, and what to expect in terms of level of use. They got some feedback on what are the amenities that they'd need. So one of the big takeaways was what we talked about earlier, and that was making more of the space usable and getting rid of that mulch pile, making the kind of navigability, not a good word, around the site more easier. And yeah.
Egress.
Just movement around. The site circulation is best. But that's why the rocks needed to move and whatnot. And then the committee really dived into just looking at the policy, watching at the language, and had a number of iterations of various drafts. Did you want to walk through?
Sure, so you have a copy
Policy.
of the policy in hand. This policy coordinates this policy with existing policies of town-owned properties, trying to put all this together so that we have some kind of uniformity to the process. Do you want to talk about each of the individual line items?
Sure,
or-
just, well, I mean, I think some of the highlights, so hopefully you've had a chance to review the document. It is, again, largely based on what we already have in place for flax and the playing fields. And I think what the committee wanted to do was really coordinate this policy with existing processes that we have in place for the use of town-owned land. So attached to the memo is a copy of the form that's used for intake. Looks like this.
The application?
That's
Is that
the
what you're referring
application
to?
for the use of town land. So we would make this policy available to everybody who's looking. We'd attach it to this form. I think there's some low-hanging improvements we can make to this form. One of the things, the board has the policy of no fee waivers. We should make note of that on this form as well. The other item is, I don't know if it copied large scale for you guys. This will be part of the application for use of the site. It's the plan that was shown at the very beginning of the slideshow. And what would be required of applicants is this is a scaled plan. So do your best to show us how you're planning to lay things out. Where are you going to put the tents? Where are you going to put the bathrooms? Where would the stage be? How is traffic going to circulate? Just really laying it out, because that will make the internal review that much more meaningful and hopefully longstanding, and we get plans that we stick with. Go
If I
ahead,
can
please.
just jump quick in and point out something with regards to the application for use. If you keep going, there's a couple of pages back. There's one that has just squares in it to have the different departments. But beyond that is the Town of Yarmouth event requirements and responsibilities. This is a handout that goes to them, so that tells them who they need to go see and what they need to see them for, including different fees for different types of things. So this is really a helping hand, so when they come into town, they know what they need to do to work on getting their event approved.
So process-wise, people come in and want to have an event. So they need to request use of the site. That's up to you guys. They'll need to fill out that application of the use of town land form. That gets circulated to various staff members. It will get circulated with that attached plan, and everybody will review. What we've also done, in addition to the checklist that Jim just pointed out, for the event requirements and responsibilities, is we hold a kind of site plan review meeting with the event organizers and really try to get the staff, everybody from the building, health, police, fire, to come to this meeting, because it's a really good opportunity to meet with the event sponsor and have a dialogue about what they're proposing and what are the rules and regulations that pertain to them. So specific to this site, so that process would be true for a large event over at the Simpkins Field. What the Drive-In Site Committee has done is really just focused on the drive-in site, understanding it's a dynamic site that's going to have some changes coming up. The policy itself really emphasizes coordinating with existing processes. We have the site approval and licensing hopefully being done concurrently, so the applicant can make one trip to this board to get all the approvals they need. There is, I think, no fee set for use of the site.
We recognize that's the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen, so we left any recommendations for fees out, because we figured that's within your parameters and not ours. So that's a discussion that you should have amongst yourselves as far as how that fee structure should be put into place. Right now, as you know, the site is basically bare of any amenities. So we've been somewhat generous with regards to charging any particular fees. But into the future, we should start considering what types of fees we do charge for the use of the facility. There's going to be some construction that's going to be going on the Parkers River. We're going to be replacing a bridge, as you all know, and they're going to want to use a section of the area for staging. So that will give us, during that time, the opportunity to put our site plan together and put our planning and finding additional funding. So in some ways, it's beneficial to us that they need that spot.
The committee did include, and it's item 13 in the policy, in the rules and regulations section, the ability to require an applicant to place a security deposit for use of the site. And this would cover any damage that's done to the site, the expectation being that they leave the site at least as nice as they found it. So this would take care of kind of the need to, if there's a rain event or something like that, to kind of rake it out, put some seed down. If there's trash that doesn't get picked up, it would cover those costs, things like that. All of that would be identified likely within 3 business days following the event. So we call out a post-event inspection within 3 days.
So throughout the rules and regulations, it pretty much spells out a lot of specific things to do. They have to empty the trash on a daily basis, for example. We do require recycling, so that, and we're very aware of the fact that this is a venue that is right on the edge of the river, so we're trying to make sure that whatever goes on there is protective of that. We require an event sponsor to be on the site during the event, so there's step-by-step rules and regulations that we put out here that if you have any questions on any particular ones, we can try to answer, but they're based upon general practices today.
So going forward, I think we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Kind of the next step would be just to make sure this is integrated into the town policies with that use of town land form. And then what we'll do is monitor the policy going forward, recognizing, again, it's an interim policy, and we may see need to change it. We may be able to find ways to install new infrastructure. The top suggestions are water, electricity, Wi-Fi, and a permanent stage has been requested. The other thing that I'd note is the site will be impacted once we get going on the Parkers River Bridge. The site will be impacted because we'll have to set aside space for staging in that area, and we'll work closely with DPW and the contractor to kind of maximize the available space, but we're aware that there will be additional constraints.
The only other thing we do need to do is we need to get a new name to this facility. So we're in the process of putting together something that we can use through social media to start coming up with some ideas for a new name. Drive-in site is probably something we don't want to know this park as, but the idea that this is going to be a special part of our community, we want to come up with a name that's going to be appropriate. So some of them are kind of fun that I've heard throughout. So that's something we're putting together in the committee structure right now, is how we're going to go about that process. And that's really your call. You can simply say to us, hey, we're naming it the desk park, and so be it. You guys get to do that, but we're going to try to help you by bringing some suggestions from the community. So that. What else?
I think that's it.
In that respect, is there any history in terms of individuals that were deeply involved in the acquisition of that site?
I mean, the selectmen at the time,
I think you'd have to go back to the Marina Committee.
Bob Lawton's Marina.
I mean, if you want to, we really.
I wasn't necessarily looking for an immediate answer.
Yeah, I
guess
think one
was
of the
just
things that we want to try to,
Marina.
and we had this discussion amongst the committee, is that
Yeah.
we want to try to make sure that we don't suggest and maybe discourage the idea of naming the park after an individual.
Well, it could be sections of it, too.
I mean, if you want
right,
to do that.
that are named
My
after
brother did move the
individuals.
article at
For a
town
large
meeting,
sum
so
of
if you
money,
do
we
want to name it Saban Park, I can, be bought. But no, we're going to try to
That's true.
encourage not using, individual names. I mean, there's very.
Well,
appropriate names to
you could
but-
do things like, it has an overall name, and then maybe the Riverwalk Park is so-and-so's, or Riverwalk Park dedicated to da-da-da. Or, you could, do things like that that are more
Well, we're hoping to
creative.
hear from some creative ideas within the community as to what those might be, and then we get to present them to you and let you figure it out, so, which will be, made for TV watching to have you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Get us to agree on it.
All right, well, I think let's open up to the board, see if there's questions on what's been put together for us. Sure.
All right, go ahead.
Anybody can jump in here.
I don't have any questions specifically, and I don't want to get into a fee structure discussion, but I do have some thoughts on fees. And I think they should be on the substantial side. And I also think that we should consider developing a fund and perhaps also consider depositing all fees into that fund that we can use for the betterment of this property. Things like you mentioned, water, power, Wi-Fi, amenities that would, you would expect to see at a venue. This is a waterfront venue. It's a great spot.
It's beautiful.
And, short of CPA requests and things like that, I don't see.
That would
money
also be a great way to accumulate contributions.
I think, so, yeah, you
Yeah,
have donations.
yeah.
We could really make the facility self-sustaining through fees and donations and things like that. So I don't know that we have an example where a recreation use has a fund where, I assume that most facilities are maintained out of general fund monies. Do all use fees go back into the general fund and then the town just automatically takes care of the properties?
Yeah,
I
we
think
would
this would be an opportunity to let this site take care of itself and invest in itself through the use of fees and donations, perhaps. That's really my only thought. We could talk about what the fees are. I don't think they should, I don't know what it was. I thought I saw $15 in here, or 55. The licensing and hearings were exclusive of probably the usage fees. I don't have any idea what a typical usage fee for another facility.
Yeah,
But, we don't want to make them burdensome, but, I think that we could consider making them a little on the larger side so that we can use the monies to maintain the property and invest in the property.
And I think as we go forward, we can start to see the amenities that we're offering and, what the cost factors are and build that into those types of fees that'd be, for example, one of the other things that we will obviously do is the same thing we've done at the Bass Hole, and that's, sell the individual planks to generate.
Yeah.
I'm all for trying to do as much of this without reaching out to the taxpayer any indirect. That's why we're looking at doing this in a way that, through grants, et
The
cetera.
bricks in the Riverwalk or whatever.
Whatever we can do
Yeah,
to,
we can do a lot of
without
things.
having to go back to the taxpayers to say, hey, give us some money. So, we're all for looking at those types of fees. And as with the development of the park continues, we can see what is the cost of maintaining, the lights and the water and and then we can build that fee structure as we go.
Yep.
It's kind
Other
of
than that, I think this is a great start. Karen alluded to the fact that it will be a living document and that we can adjust it as we see necessary. So I think it's a great start. Thank you.
Teresa?
I think Eric's on the right path. I just don't think we're there yet. I don't think we have, I think that down the road, when we have the amenities, I think then we can start charging fees. But I think right now we have to have a few events that are successful before people are even interested really in coming. And so I certainly see this down the road as something that could have a huge potential for self-sustaining income, but I think we have to just take it as it comes right now. I don't think what we have there is yet to that standard. I have a couple of little things. It says the entertainment shall be licensed by the Board of Selectmen. I guess I get nervous with the shall be. I understand what you're trying to say, it should go through the Board of Selectmen, but I wouldn't want anyone to read that and say, we shall issue a license. Because that
Okay, so
entertainment shall be licensed by the Board of Selectmen.
You're on what page? What-
number 2 on
Page 2,
rules and
yeah.
regulations.
Does that mean we shall issue the
I
entertainment
think
license?
the intent was
It has to go
that
through.
the applicant's going to bring their entertainment license to the board for consideration.
Well, I'll defer to the lawyer on that. I get nervous when it says we shall do something. But,
One lawyer on the committee.
so is the security deposit,
We'll run it by
fees
David.
aside, how do we determine what security deposit would be required?
I think that Jeff and DPW would be able to give you some feedback. So I can give you, example at the drive-in site from the last event. There was some rutting from traffic that wasn't addressed. And so we identified it, and the event sponsor was super willing to go back and kind of clean it up. And they went back and they raked it, they seeded it. They tried to repair that. There was some extra trash that wasn't able to be picked up. I think it snowed the next day. So anything, yeah, it might snow tomorrow. So it made the cleanup difficult with some of the tent ties, just things like that. But I think it would just be, an hourly rate that you could estimate, and I don't want to speak for Jeff, on what the trash pickup would cost, what the trash disposal might cost, just really on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
I think we'd have to learn from it too, Tracy,
Yeah,
as we go.
yeah. The only other thing is there's a typo under the requirements and responsibilities under the police department. It says police.
Jim,
line?
he caught it.
What's that?
What line?
Right at the end where it says the police department will meet with the organizers to determine the fire detail requirements.
Yep.
I think it should be police detail requirements.
I just cut that before our meeting.
Oh.
Thank you for catching it for us as well.
Yep. And so I don't know if we want to leave it like this for now. Maybe we'll come back and do security deposits and do fees separate as a potential, because right now, I'm not sure where we still stand with that, if this is approved. So, based on the way it's written, I mean, I guess we could put,
Where's the fee provision?
it says, security deposit shall be
13.
reimbursed for costs. So I guess that in itself, it's not just security deposits in section G, so maybe we should put security deposits and fees or town reimbursements. But basically, right now, when I look at this, it's telling me that we just want to break even. We just want to make sure that the town has their costs covered in terms of details and permitting and so on and so forth, and then we hold a portion, whatever is recommended, to put the site back to the original. But other than that, I think, from what I'm reading, am I wrong, that fees are kind of not really identified in here?
I kind of envision myself, and I mean, this will be something that the board will discuss, but the fee charge could be somewhat on a floating scale, depending upon the type of event that is going to take place there. If it's something as simple as, the Holcomb family reunion where they bring 500 people in versus Country Fest where they bring in 5,000 people. So those fees might be something that you could, put a floating scale together of some sort,
So
depending upon the use.
where's the fee in this?
There isn't.
There's no fee
Right, that's-
proposed.
Right.
There was
I
no
mean,
fee
when you-
proposed.
But wouldn't the policy say that the fees would be charged per Board of Selectmen?
It does mention
The town may request a reasonable security deposit to be determined on a
It's not a
case-by-case
fee.
basis.
not a
procedures and fees. It says pay all applicable fees.
That's a fee. I'm talking about,
We have to establish what the fee is going to be.
mean, you could put your own fee schedule together and present that to people if your event has, or you can simply leave it, you know.
We could add a line, too, that says fees may be set by at the discretion of the Board of Selectmen, or something like that, if that makes it more clear.
From the way I read this, it just is basically saying, we're going to hold a security deposit, we're going to get our money back, and
I think-
other than that, that's all. If I was an organization looking at this to do it, I would think that we would be charging a fee.
And I don't want to speak for the committee, but a fee was included in some of the old versions of the policy, and the committee deliberated a bit about this. And I think for the reasons that you mentioned, that the site really is just a site, and there's not a whole lot of amenities there. And the intent is to use the site to create buzz about the site, attract people to town, and hopefully stimulate more interest and ability to invest in the site, and then maybe a fee would
That's the
be
way I just wanna
settled.
make sure we're on the same
Yeah.
page. Okay. And I know I said it before in a joking manner, but in all honesty, we could potentially allow naming, a donation for naming rights.
You could.
And utilize that funds to do the upgrade. So
I think the Post Pavilion would be a wonderful name.
I can't afford it. But thank
Has a
you.
ring to it.
I'm trying to envision, I've never organized an event, so, and I know event organizers come with experience, so they know what they've done in other towns and so forth. But I'm trying to envision coming in and, okay, I want to hold an event at the drive-in site, and I get a thing like this that says, well, here's 10 departments, and here's all their phone numbers. And I'd kind of say, you don't have an event coordinator? Doesn't that person, can't that person help get all this stuff together? Because, I think from an event,
Is that your new title?
No. No, but the process honestly is this, and I don't disagree. I think the process can be improved. But we have the front side to that 10-cell page.
right.
And this comes into the town administrator's office currently, and it gets
Well, I have
pushed-
questions
no,
on that, too.
But then we- go
Because
ahead.
there's a lot of questions. Will a fee be charged? Check yes, then what?
So maybe we can put an FAQ attached to this that will answer some of those.
Agreed.
Yeah, are these questions that lead to something? Because, as if I just go through and say, no. Just, yeah, and then, but it's really yes. So what's the significance of these questions?
I think that, for instance, the will alcohol be served?
Yeah.
That puts Linda Hill in licensing on alert. And so it's kind of I think it's internal, and then the staff is directed to work with the applicant. So Linda would maybe reach out, or they'd get direction. I think that's where the sheet that has more recently been done, and Kyle put this together, Kyle's next on the agenda, to help kind of smooth the process. Both of these have room for improvement. So tents, it asks if you're going to have tents.
Right.
A 10 by 10 tent is really different from these massive, I don't know, 30 by 60 tents, which are really like structures, and they have all sorts of building codes that they have to meet. And unless someone knows that, they don't know that.
Yeah. I guess my thinking was more in terms of simplification for the event organizer and a single point of contact rather than multiple contacts in order to smooth the process for the event organizer. And to me, if I'm organizing an event, the easier it is to deal with the community, the more likely I am to be to say, this is great.
Agreed.
I only have one person I've got to contact. And, I come in, I get my licenses together, sign off and everything, give you the checks, and we're good to go. But if I've got to go to, 6 departments or call 6 people, I'm a little bit put off by that, I guess.
This is an ongoing issue. I think we dealt with the whole issue of permitting in town.
Right.
And, age-old, I think we talked about it when I was on the board 100 years ago, that, wouldn't it be nice to have that one go-to person that could walk you through the building permit process or to walk you through the events process? But there's one problem that gets in the way, and it's called town budgets. And to be able to afford to have that one individual that has that responsibility is not really, it's something that your finance committee could discuss, but I think that's the difficulty in it, quite frankly. So maybe we can take a little bit more time with this and give a little bit more additional instructional information so that when they do pick it up, it says, you'll need to do this.
And
I work on that a little bit.
I think working with the chamber on that issue in terms of, because obviously, they have an interest in the events being smooth, successful, and that people are encouraged to come in and work with the community, so.
No, absolutely.
And we've had a lot of good feedback from, department heads and from the chamber has given us some suggestions. So I think those are things that, again, as this evolves, we can create those types of things.
And I think one step in the right direction is the site plan review type meeting where we assemble a large crowd.
Everything,
Because, I'm a believer in, the fire department might say something that the building department's going to dovetail on. And it's a valuable setting, I think. But I don't disagree, and we'll work on that.
Okay.
Kind of centralized effort.
Okay. Mike?
First of all, thank you for your hard work, not only for this, but right from the beginning in developing the river walk and everything. You're all to be commended in the highest degree, believe me. And I was at a lot of those hearings, and the natives could get restless from time to time. And you handled yourselves professionally, and the town should be very proud of the work that you did.
Thank you.
I just have a few comments on this this document. You might want to consider consolidating some of these sections. If you look at page 3, paragraphs 13 and 14 deal with security deposits, and if you go to page 4, with capital G, that section also deals with security deposits, and I think maybe you want to integrate those sections, and I can help you if you wish, and try to put them into one cohesive section. On paragraph 10, not a big deal, but it talks about the applicant reporting safety conditions to the DPW, and I think after the word reported, maybe you want to insert the word promptly, because somebody can report it at any given time, and I think the intent is that they bring attention to it right away so that potential harm can be avoided. I think that's probably why you had that in there. The only other thing, and again, I can go through this generally, but if you'd like, if somebody can give me that indemnification paragraph on page 5, I think I can help you with that.
Thank you.
The entity that should be indemnified is the town of Yarmouth, not the Board of Selectmen. I have no problem with you leaving the Board of Selectmen in there. And then put the town of Yarmouth, comma, the Yarmouth Board of Selectmen, and on and on. But the real entity that they're indemnifying, we're just agents of the town. It's the town itself. And then on the following line where it says, in agents for any injury, the legal term should be from and against. So you're protecting the town from and against any injury, accident, illness, et cetera. Again, further down at the end of the sentence where it says, event sponsor further agrees to assume all liability and to indemnify and hold harmless. Before Board of Selectmen, I would again insert the word town of Yarmouth. And the other thing is, this indemnification should include reasonable attorney's fees, because if there's ever some kind of serious loss or a death or something like that, the fees may exceed what we budget for in terms of routine legal fees. I've really never really seen an indemnification agreement that does not have that provision.
Okay.
And again, the word reasonable protects the other side, that you just won't frivolously run up, their bill. They have to be in good faith. The other thing is, on this last provision where it says the above waiver, et cetera, the town will be indemnified even if the condition of the facilities caused or contributed to the injury. If the injury is severe enough and the negligence of the town is serious enough, that may not be upheld. So what I would probably like to see in there is, I don't have a problem leaving it in there because it's better than not having it in there. If a court doesn't uphold it, they don't uphold it, but at least you got a shot, right? But I think there should be a severability provision which says that if any part of that indemnification is ruled invalid by a court, the rest of it will survive and be binding upon the other side. That's generally in there also. That's generally in most contracts, to be honest with you. That if there's any part of it that the court says is not enforceable, the balance of it's enforceable. It doesn't void out the whole thing. So I think that would be a good thing to do. Other than that, it looks pretty good.
Mike, would you mind that we fire this off to you after we've made some of those quick edits on the indemnification?
Sure, I'd be very happy to. It wouldn't take much time. It'd take me about 15 minutes really to look at it and edit it. And
We'll redraft it and
Thank
get it
you.
out
it
to you.
sounds a lot more involved than it is. It's just a question of language and including a few things.
Thank you.
Great. Mark?
I don't have any more questions. I think it's all been laid out. Sounds good.
Okay. Well, good. Now, it sounds like we've got a great framework. You've done a lot of work on it, obviously, and so if we can polish off the remaining items and then move forward from there.
Okay, we'll make the edits.
Yeah.
We'll get a hold of Mike, and we'll come back.
Good.
Do they need to come back, or can we put it on the consent agenda?
I think that'd be, at this point, based on what I was hearing, I don't think we have too many substantive issues at this stage.
That would be great. Thank you for the suggestion.
And as you could see, I would encourage you on July 20th and 21st to go to the Country Fest.
Go,
I went to see Alabama a couple weeks ago, and Charlie Daniels opened for a minute. 82 years old, that guy rocked. He put on a great show, so he is still very worth seeing.
So one of the things we're doing at these events is we're doing surveys, with the chamber and with, sometimes we get asked at town meeting, where's all your money? Or is it, the tourism preservation funds, and where are they going? And so we're utilizing some of those to actually find out where the people are coming from. Are they staying in our hotels? Are they eating in our restaurants? So we're actually starting to be able to quantify the return on this investment to the community as well. So that's another.
How do we apply for a business ombudsman or an events planner through the Tourism Revenue Preservation Fund?
well, it's a good segue. We can talk with CEDC. Having Kyle on board has helped with a lot of this stuff, but it's kind of having that's kind of some intense time.
Yeah.
I think we'd want to do kind of I'm going to sound like someone else I know, like a little time study on how much work would that actually take to build a quote. We can work with the chamber, who's kind of experienced in this area as well, and see if we can come up with some estimate.
Okay.
Be great.
Thank you all very much.
You.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good night. Go Bruins.
Okay.
What time are they on?
All right, we'll go on to our next item on the agenda, the Economic Development Coordinator presentation. Good evening.
Hello.
Chop, chop.
Just occurred to me what you said.
I want to watch the game.
Well, don't let us keep you. You just go on your merry way.
Important stuff.
We'll talk fast.
Yeah, sorry.
Kyle can talk really fast.
Hello, everybody. My name's Kyle Pedicini. I'm the town's economic development coordinator. You might wonder what the town's economic development coordinator does exactly, and hopefully this presentation sheds some light on that. So I see my main role in the town as the town's friendly face to our business community. Just a little background on me. I am a native Cape Codder. I'm the son of a local entrepreneur, so I'd like to think I have a solid appreciation for the type of challenges that face our local businesses. So basically anything and everything I can do to help our local businesses with their municipal needs, I'm happy to do so. Some examples of that is I get some phone calls from people who are curious as if they can do certain businesses at their addresses, so I'll consult with the building commissioner, provide them some zoning information. If they're in Old Kings Highway, I'll provide them with information on that. I try to be their one-stop shop, kind of what you were talking about with event people, for all the things they're gonna have to worry about from the town's perspective. I've had some businesses inquire about different economic incentive programs that we offer. So PACE, which you guys adopted at one of your recent meetings as an ordinance for the town. I've provided information on that. I get a lot of inquiries about the short-term rental tax law that just went into place. So we have created a section on our website, as you can see here on the right, that provides some information about that. And then also on this page, you can see our zoning portal, an example of how people can kind of do some of their research on their own using resources on our website. So our zoning portal, as I'll get into later, is on our website, and that can provide you some preliminary zoning information. So I do a lot of administration with the Community and Economic Development Committee, CEDC. So as we were kind of just talking about, we do a lot of tourism grants for special events. We do physical improvement projects. We look at things like PACE. And as you can see on your right here, we've recently updated, or the CEDC recently updated their work plan and set their goals. So we're working to accomplish them on a continuous basis. I've also set up a committee webpage so that the public can stay up to date on the packets and exactly what we're talking about at those meetings. So here's some of the examples of some physical improvement projects we've done recently. I don't know if anybody's noticed the new fencing around town, but we just recently have gotten some new fencing at 4 different locations, 378, Route 28, across from the library. Route 68 Common, that fencing should be starting next week sometime. And we've had 2 new fences at Sears Field, which I think really adds to improving the overall aesthetics of the town, makes it a more desirable place to patronize. Other projects that we have ongoing are roadway banners. We're trying to get those up in 2 different locations in town. In the Four Corners area near the Bass River Bridge and the Chamber of Commerce area, kind of, again, improving the aesthetics of town, making it a more pleasant place to visit. So we're in the process of doing procurement now for the banner installation. So we're going to have to, DPW likely won't have the manpower to do the putting up and taking down of the banners, so we have to contract out for that. Once we have gotten quotes for that, which should be this week sometime actually, CDC will be presenting a policy to you at some point on the roadway banners. Other ongoing projects are we're going to be trying to get a new community information board in front of the Chamber of Commerce. We're working with different department heads to address signage needs around town. And as you've seen in the previous presentation, we're working through different site improvements, the drive-in site, to make that more of a event venue. We've also done a lot of work to promote the Opportunity Zone. There admittedly is a lot more work to be done to promote the Opportunity Zone, but we've developed this Opportunity Zone brochure to kind of show investors a snapshot of exactly what the town of Yarmouth has to offer. We actually recently applied for the Opportunity Zone Academy, which would be a technical assistant program that would provide no-cost assistance to the town, that would basically help us better understand how to market these opportunity zones to potential investors. We should find out sometime this week whether or not we're admitted into that. I also do a lot of help with the Water Resources Advisory Committee. As I think we kind of all understand now, water resource infrastructure is kind of That's the key to economic development in the town in the future. So basically anything and everything I can do to help that committee market our water resources planning efforts. I've developed a couple of these one-page pamphlets to kind of provide a simple and easy to digest snapshot of what exactly the economic impacts of wastewater infrastructure are. So I do a lot of the marketing on that through Facebook, Constant Contact, and the town's website. I try to make sure to improve communications. And I've done a lot of website edits to try to add helpful resources and see if I can
Cross your
add some
fingers.
examples. Our doing business page, and I will admit I do think there's more improvements that we can make to these pages, but just getting these resources on there is definitely an improvement from where it was before. We have our zoning portal, as I mentioned before. Here's a commercial site availability in Yarmouth, which if you click on, you get all the MLS listings for commercial properties in Yarmouth, information on short-term rental taxes, and then we have another page which provides some more local information, our site plan review process, information about that, town permitting, who you see for certain things, information about our overlay districts and our growth incentive zones, opportunity zone brochure, PACE information, CEDC, so on and so forth. And I'm also involved in, miscellaneous town projects on the website. Like I, for instance, recently created the Route 6A corridor improvement. I created a webpage for that just to help improve communications with the public, basically to help them understand what those meetings are all about. Back to the topic of having like a one-stop shop for event. I've kind of been that recently for a couple events. For Ragnar and the Country Festival in particular, I've helped coordinate those meetings that were referenced, the site plan review type meetings where we get representatives from every department or all the applicable departments in one room. And then we have the template to the right there for all the things that will be required. And then at the meeting, I take down all the notes for all the additional comments that were made, and I provide that to them afterwards. They know they have a whole list of what is required. If they have any questions about those requirements, who they can contact. And then I'll also provide them an Excel spreadsheet down here on the left where they can actually click the links and see all the permits that they're going to need. And there is, as you guys have mentioned, there is work to be done in the future about developing a more comprehensive event guide, and that could have more helpful tips for event organizers. Just various other items I've been involved in. I try to post on the town's Facebook page as much as I can to, again, it's all coming back to improving communications with the residents. I attend relevant economic development conferences to try to stay up to date on different incentive programs. I publish press releases, again, to try to improve communications, to let the residents know exactly, what their tourism dollars are being invested in. And I just, I lend assistance to special projects wherever I can, in our department and other departments. I do a lot of planning board research. An example of that is for accessory dwelling units. I did a lot of research for that just to see what other towns do, and participation in town events such as the intergenerational model UN, where I saw this post there, which was a nice event. So, that.
I'm happy that Dan asked us to come in and kind of reintroduce you to Kyle. I think he swung through when he first started. It's been really great having Kyle in the office and around town, and I think he's added, better customer service for a lot of the projects, and an example I can give you is the Route 6A project, and there's a meeting here tomorrow night if anybody is interested to come at 6 o'clock. Another one a week from today at the First Congregational Church up on Route 6A at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's the 22nd, thank you. I'm still on the 14th. 222. But anyways, having Kyle around, he was able to go door to door to the 6A businesses and hand out the brochure and say, hey, this meeting's going on. We hope you can attend and hear from you, that your feedback's important. The zoning portal that Kyle had on one of the first slides is this interactive tool, came to us through the Cape Cod Commission, was something Kathy and Mark were working on. We really needed someone with new eyes and someone unfamiliar and new to process, to really dive in. He tested this thing. We gave him a bunch of different scenarios. Can you do an ice cream shop here? Can you do a doctor's office there? To really kind of give us a certain comfort level before we pushed it out to the world to use. So that's been great. I think, too, Kyle, through his presentation, he's really emphasized improved communications. We have lots more Facebook posts, lots more glossy materials that are not just glossy, but they're interesting and educational and informative for people, and press release. And we're really making a concerted effort to make sure everybody knows kind of all the different projects that are going on, and just a little bit more than we were able to before. So having Kyle's been a real pleasure, and he's done a great job.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you for the update, and I think we're all appreciative of the things that are going on in that respect. The more we can do to, I think, message to our community that we're active and that we're interested in economic development, the better off we'll be, and it generates more and more interest among the businesses as well as our community members. So I'll open it up to our board, see if there's anyone that'd like to ask any questions at this stage.
I don't have anything, thank you.
I just want to say thank you. This has been a huge priority of ours, and I think anything that we can do. I know Norm recently had a lengthy, I didn't even read them all, email conversation about our commercial valuations. And so to have a healthy community, I think we all agree that having a more stronger business community is very, very important for all of us. So to whatever end we could work towards that, to know that you're there is great. I'll send people, because I hear from people all the time, how long until sewer's coming? How long until, can I do this? So I'll be sending them your way.
Good,
and
excellent.
I appreciate it. And I guess from your experience and what you've learned in your other seminars, what aren't we doing? I'd love to hear what your thoughts on what we can do. And I don't know if that's for this presentation, but certainly I'm interested in being as aggressive on this as we can be, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I think it all comes back to wastewater infrastructure, to be honest. If you read the UMass report, it's all really spelled out there that if we do not do something about sewers in towns, businesses will not reinvest or invest in their properties, and they will continue to deteriorate. And it's a question of, do we want to live in a community where businesses continue to deteriorate and don't have incentive to invest in their properties? And what does that do to your commercial tax base and your residential taxes? So it's all about, coming to a consensus on wastewater infrastructure. I think is the biggest, it's going to be the biggest, whether or not this town has economic vitality in the future. It's wastewater infrastructure.
Well, I agree with that. Unfortunately, like when I recently had somebody contact me about possible redevelopment of their property, and, we're legit 5 years or so off from that. So coming up with some possible stopgaps or some ability for them to do, I know we did it briefly prior to the last vote, but there were some hotels that, we didn't make them do a full upgrade of their septic, but some in the interim. Things like that, I think, are something we need to be thinking about now, because in the meantime, 6 years is still, even if we go full force, that's a long time for people to do nothing with their property that really want to invest here and employ people. So I think we need to really be thinking about some short-term regulations to allow incremental allowances or whatever we can do to get them to actually invest in their properties until we get the wastewater infrastructure in place, so.
It's good feedback.
Okay. Comments, questions?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
I don't have any questions. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thanks again. I appreciate your presentation and your efforts. We're going to talk about herbicide, I guess. This is kind of a comeback of a discussion that occurred, actually, I was
January, I
I was out then, thankfully.
Yep. So it's, over the course of intermeeting time, from that time to now, we had an opportunity to hear from the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission, and then the various departments that are affected by it. I tried to encapsulate it in a very brief, one-page memo to you. There's supporting documents that come with that. Amongst the findings that we had was that, particularly in the conservation areas, it's a pretty significant tool, herbicide. It's glyphosate is the chemical of question. Along the waterways, very strict application requirements there. The CONSCOM had thought that it needs to continue to be a part of the strategy for these invasive species. They're very hardy. Golf reiterated on a much smaller level, they do a little bit of work with it, but again, very small. Parks, same thing, very small, very targeted application by licensed applicators. So it's not like there's a wholesale spraying or activity going on. It's very much targeted towards specific troublesome locations. It is highly regulated, that is true. It's regulated under the FIFRA, which is the Federal Insecticide and Rodenticide and Fungicide Act, which requires it to be applied by people with licenses. It also, with OSHA rules now in town, we have to have very specific training requirements of staff, including going over the health ramifications and protective measures if we were to deploy it. And if you read the SDS that comes with it, there's very minimal protective measures required by the manufacturer if done in accordance, and this is the key, like with any chemical substance, in accordance with the manufacturer's guidelines. And that's also included in a document I sent to you from the US EPA recently as April 30th. EPA confirming its findings that, if used in accordance with manufacturer's instructions, they find it to be a safe chemical. That's not going to stop the public debate that's going on for sure. There was a recent case out in California of a jury finding for somebody that had alleged that they were impacted by it. It's hard to make public policy in a courtroom for sure, but the issue's not going to go away. But I think for now, the departments have asked, they'd like to be able to continue to use it. They are looking actively for alternatives when possible. So they'll continue to do that, and the CONSCOM correspondent supported that activity as well.
Do we need anything by way of a motion to, I know we were asked to ban the use. If we take no action, do we need to take an action to take no action?
I think no action by this board means that we can continue to use it as the manufacturer's instructions allowed in accordance with the SDSs and the labels on the device, on the application. I think the key really becomes if it was the board's desire to prohibit the practice by not only town staff but also our vendors, then we would need to have that vote from the board. But
I
that's
make
not
a
what I'm
motion that we prohibit herbicide applications on town property by the town.
I'll second that for discussion.
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly about this. I think that we are doing, and I understand Dan's work. I appreciate staff, but I think we, in this case, can lead by example. It's really about money. And, for 3 or 4 years, we've written NSTAR, and we've asked them, at the request of our citizens, to not spray on their property. So I think that, if it's wrong for them to do it, I think it's wrong for us to do it. And I think that when we're talking about our single source nitrogen and our, our single source aquifer, I think we have to start to try to take every step we can to not put this type of stuff in the ground. And I know it's not much, but there are alternatives out there, and I think that we should be using them.
According to what we have, there are no alternatives.
There are alternatives.
As such as what?
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but I know that there are. We got the information. I'm not going to speak for anybody, but I know that we've had it before. The information about what some of the alternatives are.
For crying out loud, I kill stuff, and I just did it this last week with a gallon of vinegar, some Dawn detergent, a cup of Dawn detergent, and a cup of Epsom salts combined. And within 12 hours, all those weeds on the brick walk into the house had turned brown. And I guess, you know, and I understand that our town departments don't want to make a change, but if it is minor, that argues the point of, if it is minor, then why continue to use it? You know, if it's an incidental use or an insignificant amount of use, then fine, find an alternative. I'm not sure where we're using it that it is so critical that we can't buy a gallon of vinegar and pour it on the weeds. You know, I think there are alternatives, and easy ones that not only are effective, but are cheap. We have any other comments? Questions?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I appreciate getting all this information, but quite frankly, having just received it, I really haven't had a chance to sort of go through it. I'm particularly interested in the recommendations from the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission. I think they may be supportive. Help me if I'm wrong here, but I think they may be supportive of the motion that's on the floor right now.
No.
They're not.
Quite the opposite. Conscom uses it for Phragmite management, and as far as they're concerned, there isn't a legitimate alternative.
In terms of managing Phragmite?
Correct.
Particularly hardy, and the way, and so just so everybody's clear, the way in which it was explained to me is that was used, when they cut the stalk, they drop the chemical onto the
I
plant
see.
stem so that it doesn't come back, gets into
I
the
see.
roots. So it's not like it's sprayed across the
Got it.
the water
So
line.
that's probably one of the principal uses that we have.
That is, no question. There's 6 locations that were.
The Norm Holcomb approach might not necessarily work in a situation.
Pour vinegar on the stalks? I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot of very valuable information that you put together here. I just haven't had the time getting this today. I know there was something sent over the weekend, was there?
Not that I know.
No, okay.
No, but I mean, to the point about the Conscom, they did look at this and the alternatives, and, you know, I mean, they're a very conservative body in town here as it relates to protection of our natural resources, and you know, they encouraged in their findings the continued use of safer alternatives and whatnot, but what they didn't want to do was take away a tool in the toolbox of something that is really problematic here on the Cape, for sure.
Okay.
I think other towns are moving towards this. I'd be interested in what they're using for alternatives, but I think we got the information that they were asked to provide. That's what I think. I'm not sure that they were really given the ask of what else they could do, but.
What other uses? I mean, we really have to get into nitpicking the uses of this chemical throughout the town, and it's just, I read this in this morning's paper about how many billions of dollars is
$2 billion.
the court settlement for?
It's too bad.
What, that one person?
I think it's going to be the first of many, though. That's the problem. It set precedent.
Yeah,
It was
there's many,
78
many
million,
lawsuits.
and I cannot figure out whether that was a lump sum awarded to one person, or if that was a sum of money set aside to deal with all future similar cases. Mike, do you know the answer to that? Does it sound
It
reasonable that
sounded
one
like it was a
person?
single award, but it's hard to believe that that kind of an award, well, there is a punitive damage component too, but when you get excessive awards, courts can reduce them. It's called the remitter action. And it was explaining how many times actual damages are generally permitted before a court will knock them down. So a lot of those numbers that come in get greatly reduced anyway. But to answer your question, that seemed like an awful big number to me for one case. If that's for one plaintiff, I
Right.
think I'm going to move to California.
Right. And that was to a person who was exposed to, from my understanding, exposed to large quantities on a daily basis.
Yeah, and he got supposedly cancer from it.
Right. And I still don't think that it has been proven that that was the cause. But I could be wrong. That's,
Well, in this material we got, EPA saying that it's safe to use, so, I don't know, if I was certain that there was some environmental damage that was imminent, I'd certainly be against it. As Dan says, the boards that have reviewed this don't seem to take that position, and the government agency that oversees the use of this stuff in moderate use, according to the intended amounts, don't seem to think it's a problem. So,
But we had a problem with Eversource spraying it.
yeah, I'm not. I wish I had more expertise, to be honest with you, to evaluate this
Well, I think
material.
in the Eversource case, one of the options that Eversource rejected typically
Was just
was
cutting.
manual methods of cutting it. When in a wide-scale cleaning of the right-of-way, yeah, you could definitely do manual cut methods versus what they had proposed. And, for them, on such a huge amount of mileage, they're looking to save $1, there's no question. In this particular situation, in the use patterns that we found, particularly in the conservation areas along the water with Phragmites, it's so durable in the environment, it's an effective way to hold it back for a couple of years. Now, interestingly, to Selectman Holcomb's point, we did, I think it was 2 years ago, had the beautification team out on Route 28 applying a mixture of vinegar, Dawn, and I forget what else was in there, baking soda or something, and they ended up having to be stopped by Mass DOT. You can't do that. You have an applicator's license, right? Because it's you're designing to kill something, right? So
With vinegar?
yeah. So it's one of those things. Like I just want to, so the board knows there are alternatives, as it was explained to me. In every instance, it may not always be as cost effective and as effective over the long term as how we're presently using it. But like anything else, if there's an order to do something, then we would do it. But they do not do a lot of the use of it. And then the golf is in the same area, particularly near the waterways, to control invasive foliage that comes in. So.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, in the March 5th letter from the Board of Health, they also mentioned it's being used to control poison ivy. And they don't simply say they encourage or advocate continued use. They say that the town staff should continue to explore effective alternatives to the use of glyphosate, and that the town formulate a town-wide policy which allows for the current use with the careful techniques and minimum quantities that the different departments in town have outlined. And they go on further to say that, in addition, there be no further or additional use of that chemical allowed in town beyond the current levels. So it's not, their recommendation isn't simply to just keep on using it, it's to look for alternatives and try to develop a town-wide policy encouraging careful techniques in minimal quantities. and not have any escalating use.
Well, I could amend my motion to put a certain date in the future to give them time to come up with alternatives and to fund those alternatives if the board would prefer that. But I think if we don't do something, they're gonna, we potentially could continue the use of it. And I think that we should not. I mean, it doesn't have to be effective today, but I think working towards that end, if we don't put a date on it, they're never gonna find an alternative. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that they're never gonna find an alternative. I think that this would force them to find an alternative.
All right, well, we have a motion, I seconded that I would accept that amendment. And why don't we put it to a vote?
Do you want a time restriction?
Excuse me, do you have a time?
I mean, how much time do you think they need to develop some type of alternatives and be able to fund that? Would that
I think
be?
in the next budget cycle, if there's gonna be a cost, I do know, in speaking to Conscom, or Kelly Grant, that one of the replacements for it, if it's not been found, is more aggressive hand methods of removal, which would drive up the cost of contracted prices. So without knowing what the impact is in the multi-year plan for Phragmites, that could have a dollar value, so it'd have to be in the next budget cycle, so.
So
a year from now, before you get into the
by,
spring season, you know?
upon the beginning of FY '21.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'm not sure I understand the motion. What happens at the beginning of FY '21?
They no longer would be able to use it.
We
Up
wouldn't
until
use it
then,
at
they
all.
will, in between now and then, they'll develop strategies and find funding to accommodate any alternative.
Okay. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. All right. We'll move forward. All right, board and committee actions. We have any appointments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. With respect to the Water Resources Advisory Committee, you might recall we accepted the resignation of Rob Angel. He sort of represented the Yarmouth Port, the north side representative of the committee. So Renee Hammond has asked to take that assignment. And so I'm recommending that we reappoint or continue the appointment of Ms. Hammond as the north side representative to the Town of Yarmouth's Water Resources Advisory Committee, continuing on with a term that runs through August 2020.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
We
Hearing
don't-
none. All
we-
those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We don't have her application in here. She lives in,
She's already on the committee. She's already been appointed.
so she's from Yarmouthport?
Yes, yes. She was serving as the at-large member. And I'm recommending that we appoint Spiro Mitrakostas to the Town of Yarmouth's Water Resources Advisory Committee. He would fill the at-large slot being vacated by Ms. Hammond. This is an appointment that would fill that slot running through August 2021.
I'll move that appointment.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And one final item is on the Rec Commission, we have an individual that, well, let's put it this way, we have two individuals that have not appeared and served for quite some time. There's an effort being made to determine their desire to continue serving. In the meantime, Ms. Britta, Susan Britta has expressed an interest in serving on the Yarmouth Recreation Commission. I'm recommending that we appoint her as an alternate because of the quorum issues, so that she could serve when those other individuals are not there. So I'm recommending we appoint her as an alternate with a term running through for 1 year, ending in June 2020.
I have a question on that.
Yep.
On the recommendation, it says to appoint her as a member to the commission. It doesn't say anything about an alternate. Was that just an oversight, or
That was an oversight.
was there a change in plans there?
I had expected that we would know definitively that the two individuals would not be continuing to serve and that we would have resignations, but we don't have those in hand.
Okay,
Does the commission call for alternates?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll move that
Second.
appointment.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It carries. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Mark. All right, we have the minutes of September 27th and October 16th. Thank you again for 2 sets of minutes. We have a motion.
So moved. Move the minutes.
Okay. Second?
Was that a motion on both sets?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain, okay. All right, upcoming agenda. We have meeting planned for
June 4th.
June 4th, is the next meeting, so we go almost 3 weeks.
June 6th, I'll know more maybe, I think, on Friday on the DHY meeting, but right now, that's a June 6th date.
Okay. So that is, so that'd be a Thursday then?
Yeah, we still don't know where it would be, though.
Okay. All right, and do we have any kind of an agenda for that meeting?
No, nothing has been published yet.
So what is the actual purpose?
To bring everybody, remember, it's the 3 groups, boards, the finance committees, and their water advisory group, to bring everybody, it's an annual check-in, everybody up to speed with the latest changes of the legislation that's forward, and also to, I believe what they're going to try to do is check in and get this sentiment as if everybody is in agreement to try to bring an article for the agreement into fall town meetings.
I just made my appointment to meet with Kurt and Rich for the 20th, so how am I expected to go to this and not get what is essentially going to be an update until 2 weeks later?
The 20th of June?
No, May 20th.
Was it May 20th?
May 20th, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, we're trying to get all of that done, so
Oh.
you
I
got
thought they
that
weren't
info
available on
going.
the 20th.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're right. It wasn't the 20th. I had to do it for another day. So I forget it. I get my months mixed up.
So
Okay.
does this meet the criteria of the charter, though? The tri-town meeting, will that be considered a business meeting?
Yes, so we have to post it for all those organizations as an open meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, so I hear what you're saying. From a two times meeting in June for the board? I suppose that it could. It would be up to you if you wanted to do that. I mean, it's going to be out of town, so we couldn't take care of the information that's on schedule for June 4th at that time.
What, on June 6th? No, well, we have to go through reorganization as well.
Yeah, so we put that on
And,
there.
I don't think June 6th is a good time to do that.
No. So June
and I-
4th, though, would be a kind of a quick meeting, I suppose, right? If you had reorganization on there?
Yeah,
You'll have swearing
it should be
in.
on there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Get sworn at. Somebody's gonna get sworn at.
Yes, that's right.
Well, get
Yeah.
sworn out.
Yeah, we have to have that, yeah. Our town clerk has to be present to do that. All right, anything else, any other questions, comments, additions to the agenda?
The special leave indemnity fund that was passed at town meeting, that policy will be before you on the 4th for review and potential approval and discussion. We'll send it in advance, but that'll be an
Okay.
item for the 4th as well.
All right. We had an email, Eric, I don't know if you want
Yes.
to talk about that now?
Sure, we can bring it up.
Yeah.
Have to, at some point, It looks like we have a relatively light summer schedule so far, but I think we should have the discussion about, what's next, assuming, of course, that were the DY project not to move forward, that we would have some kind of backup plan for our Town of Yarmouth buildings, specifically ME Small and Matakes. And I'd like to add an agenda item to discuss what that backup plan and moving forward looks like.
So that would really be to frame what kind of things we should consider for a specific future meeting?
Yeah, I think we all recognize that ME Small is certainly failing and Matakes is aging, so we need to do something.
Right.
And absent a new building on, on the Station Ave site, I don't think we can afford to do nothing.
Right.
So the discussion would involve, what our plan would look like, if we were to move forward absent that project.
Okay. Okay. So is that appropriate for June 4th?
Not probably June 4th. What I'd like to do is also at the same time have Jay address you as on the lease issues of the buildings.
Okay.
And then maybe by that time, maybe there's a court decision, I don't know. But I think just if we move it out to June 18th, Jay will be here anyways, and he can address. One of the issues I think that was brought up earlier that I think is important is to understand that as it's presently constructed, the agreement would put us on the hook for repairs over at Wixon School. And so we'd probably want to hear from council a process, because I don't think you'd want to undertake significant repairs on Matakes and then be on the hook for that if that agreement doesn't get changed.
Well, Dennis would also be on the hook
That's
for any
correct.
repairs to Matakes.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
So it complicates things a little bit, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we can have
Okay.
that conversation then.
Yeah.
And any other data that I've got available that I'll track down that might be available to us.
And that's all supposing that a regional agreement is in place. If the regional agreement were, if we were to do something to try to eliminate the regional structure, then that might change the whole scenario with regard to any work that we wanted to do on those two schools.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, then, yeah. When could Jay be available then? To
On the
talk
18th.
about
He's
that?
planning on coming to town on the 18th.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any other comments then with regard to the agenda or individual items?
I have an individual item.
Okay.
The volunteer breakfast is tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock at the Flax Pond Building. All volunteers are welcome to attend. This is something we re-implemented, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and our turnout has been slowly building up. Good opportunity to get a nice breakfast of scrambled eggs, fruit, muffin, sausage, talk with volunteers from other boards and committees, and it's a nice time. It starts at 8, and it generally begins to thin out within an hour or an hour and a half, I think. So I ask everybody to attend. I will be there, getting my bacon. That's all.
I know
Thank you.
most of the staff is involved in serving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Any other individual items?
I just want to say, always at the end of a 3-year term, this could be my last meeting, so I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, obviously, to have served, and obviously I hope to continue, but I'm not going to campaign from this table. I just want to say to staff and to the board that there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and I'm appreciative to have been part of working together. But having said that, there is an election and there is an override. And I think some people are a little bit confused about the process with the budget for the school passing a town meeting. It still needs to pass at the ballot on the 21st, so next Tuesday, so get out and vote. So thank you.
Okay, all right. All right, we'll move on then to consent agenda.
Yes, on the consent agenda is a request from the Yarmouth Police Relief Association on a fee waiver request, and also on the Yarmouth Port Library, same thing. This has been done in the past as well. And then there's some gifts to our various town departments, senior services.
Do you need this also, the waiver, the health insurance waiver added to that?
I'm going to hold that tonight we were going to discuss that at further on June 4th.
Okay, do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Town administrator updates?
Thank you. To just echo what Christine had mentioned earlier, and the sighting board will have a issue its final decision, and then it's got to be issued by BOEM a little bit later in the year. And that, hopefully for this round, wraps up our involvement with Vineyard Wind. There is 2 more offshore parcels that are going out for lease. Right now, from what I understand, those parcels for the next set of turbines would be scheduled to go into Brayton Point because of the way they are geography towards the ocean, that it would make more sense. That all being said, I don't know what the future holds as it relates to other projects offshore. There's been some conversation out of Boston that there's going to be some more legislation to offer more offshore wind. It's not going away, so I think all that work that was done has positioned the town in a good position for the future. But for now, I would look to put a wrap on our legal services. I'll have an end-of-the-year report for you on how much was incurred on that topic. So, and then other than that, we continue to dialogue on the wastewater issue. We did receive official notice that Harwich received a grant for $50,000 to continue the planning activities through October. So that's good news on that front as well. The DPW facility, I got an update from the director the other day. The group has met. They're moving very quickly, and Mr. Talley can give you some more detail on that, but it sounds like they're going to be in position to get a project potentially out for bid estimation, so that it could be in hand at fall town meeting, right?
Correct. Yeah. That was part of the decision to defer till fall town meeting. Was that the committee felt strongly that it would be better to have bids in hand and then go before town meeting for voter approval than it was to go on, estimates that were generated by engineers and architects. Because as we've seen in the past, how do I say this in a politically correct way? Those aren't always accurate. So, we agreed that was a good, and it jived well with the fact that we created a fall town meeting, so it all worked out. So it's coming along nicely. We get to start to talk about colors, and I don't get the sense that there's going to be a whole lot of, that's not going to be an easy discussion.
Eric, from experience dealing with building a new building in the Hartford area and dealing with colors in the office for separations, and decor of the building.
Well,
everybody has an opinion.
I sit on the tech building committee too, and that's 20 people, so that we're able to carve off subcommittees to talk about things like colors and finishes. But this committee is small enough where it falls on the entire committee. So the limited discussion we've had so far has been interesting, but we'll get through it.
All right, good. Okay, is there anything else?
That's it.
All right, thank you. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.